Is the bench press worth doing? Now, some people love this movement, some people hate this movement, some people say it is suboptimal, some people even say that it is the most dangerous movement that you can do in the gym. So, at the end of this video, we're going to answer the question, is the bench press worth doing? So first, let's look at the argument against the barbell bench press, and let's start with probably the most important thing, safety.
I'm gonna die.
Some people argue that it is the most dangerous movement that you can do in the gym, and actually I would agree, at least from a fatality or mortality standpoint. If any movement in the gym is gonna take you to the Grim Reaper, it's gonna be the barbell bench press, okay? Dumbbells, you can drop to the side. A squat, you can drop off of you. Overhead press, unless it lands directly on your head, is not going to be an issue. Usually you can push it in front of you or push it to the side, like an Olympic weightlifter failing a lift. Squats, deadlifts, any of these other movements, they might injure you, but they're not going to delete you. And so I found a few posts on Reddit which looked at studies. Here's a quote. All deaths involved males, most occurred in the home, 78%, with the bench press or other supine exercises, 67% implicated. At least 75% of deaths were associated with free weights, and at least 50% with the bench press. Another post, 22 out of 25 deaths seem to have occurred during or from the bench press. 15 out of 25 happened at home. So if you are bench pressing alone at home,
Now you're dead!
definitely set safety supports, and you want to be a little bit more risk averse because, again, if any movement is going to take you out, it is the bench press. But I don't think that's really a reason to not bench press. It's just a reason to bench press intelligently. It's a similar situation to shark attacks. When they do happen, they are sensationalized, they're on the news, everyone sees about them, they hear about them. But how many shark attacks that were deadly occurred in the United States in 2022? Think about it. Take a second, summon up a number in your head. Okay, multiply that number by 0. That's how many actually occurred. And one argument against the bench press is the lack of a range of motion. Now, Geoff actually did a video ranking his top 10 chest exercises, and his number one pick was the barbell bench press, and his response to the range of motion argument was that as long as you have other movements working this contracted position, it doesn't really matter. And I would agree. Other people say that you're not getting a full stretch. I think you're getting enough of a stretch, and I also think that often people say, oh, you can get more range of motion with dumbbells. But if you look at the way they actually dumbbell bench press, they're not actually going below where they would with a barbell. So just because you can use more range of motion, that doesn't mean you need to, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be beneficial. Another argument would be that it is dangerous because of pec tears, and you can find many instances. I'll roll a few clips. If you're squeamish, don't look during the next 30 or 40 seconds. But they do happen, but they do seem to happen mostly in enhanced lifters, guys who get very strong, very fast, and their tendons don't catch up, okay? So their tendons are lagging behind, they're progressing too rapidly, and then boom, something happens. Often there is very poor decision-making that goes along with this. Maybe they are maxing out when they shouldn't, maybe they are not using full range of motion, maybe they just don't have the mobility needed to get the range of motion. If you look at someone like Ryan Crowley, the fact that he used a GoFundMe when he had literally a dozen bad decisions leading up to that pec tear, I find to be a little bit strange. For example, I talked to Dennis Arnold, who has well over a 500-pound bench press, and he has never had any pec issues, no pec tears, no shoulder issues, no rotator cuff issues, has never had a bench press injury despite being ridiculously strong.
God damn, I'm strong!
And I think this is a big benefit of training naturally. You become much more resilient because your rate of progression is natural. And I think a lot of these issues are not necessarily the barbell bench press. It's the fact that this is a big lift. This is the lift. How much you bench, okay? So it's not how much you dumbbell bench press, not how much you incline bench press, not how much you can do for ring flies or something else. And so there is a lot of ego attached to this lift. often people max out on this lift, maybe too frequently, maybe too much, maybe not altering the movement, and they end up with overuse injuries. But that's not the movement. It is how it is programmed and how it is performed. If there are weighted dip competitions, we would see just as many issues. If there were 1 rep max dumbbell bench press competitions, even on an incline, even on a decline, whatever, we would see just as many issues. So it's more the programming and how it is done. Now, one argument is that you are locked onto this bar, and so it forces you into positions that you might not want to get in. And so I do think adding in a variety of bars, you can use a Swiss bar, you can use a reverse grip, you can do close grip, you can do Spoto press, you can do Larson press. I think having these variations and having some variety in your program can go a long way to staying healthy. You can incorporate rings, machines. There are lots of ways to build your chest. And I would say even if you are a power lifter, not doing just a super hyper specific program is probably a good idea in the long term. All right, now for the arguments for the barbell bench press. Now, I would say one of the bigger ones, which a lot of people don't rate highly enough, is fun.
Well, the answer's simple. I like the barbell bench press. That's it.
It's just enjoyable. They like doing it. This was one of the most mentioned attributes in this 1,000+ comment section. 110 times the word fun appeared. So I do think that in terms of sustainability, in terms of just keeping the habit of doing a movement or going to the gym even, your enjoyability is a major factor. And so even if you make the argument that it is not optimal in terms of biomechanics, if someone enjoys it and they push themselves way harder, it actually becomes optimal. And yeah, you can try to trick yourself into thinking, some press around or some weird cable movement that is quote unquote optimal. Oh, now I care just as much about this. That doesn't work for a lot of people. You also have basically infinite progression on a barbell bench press. You have micro loading, and so you can add just small amounts of weight over time, whereas a lot of cable stations, you're going to max them out. Some dumbbells, you're going to max them out. I only have 40 kilo dumbbells at my gym. I've maxed them out on incline dumbbell bench press for 11 reps or so, and so it's a movement that I have to do later in the workout. Otherwise, I'm very quickly just going to outpace that and be too high in reps for my preference. Whereas a barbell bench press, for better or worse, mostly better, you can add as much weight as you want. Now, the bench press is also in powerlifting, so if you want to compete in that, you kind of have to barbell bench press. You can't just go up and be like, yeah, actually, could I just do a machine chest press instead? Or could I use dumbbells for this anyway? Nope, that's not a thing. You can't just substitute in whatever movements you want. I also think one of the main draws of power building as a whole is that competitive aspect to it, and how it does incentivize you to drive progression where you might not otherwise drive it. Now, sometimes that can be bad, but I think for most people in most situations, it's a good thing. I also do think that, especially nowadays with social media, it's easy to get distracted with all these little movements like the press around, these press arounds and cable variations and trying to contract a single fiber. If you're more advanced, I could see how that could be useful. But there's a lot of people who can't even bench press one plate. And then they're getting distracted with all these, squeeze presses and different angles and stuff. Stick to the basics at first. You won't regret it. It'll be more consistent progression. And you can add those things in later, no problem. But in the beginning, I really think that just mastering the basics is a very good investment. Some people will say that anyone defending the basics is doing so because of emotion, or they have some kind of connection to these movements. My bench press sucks, okay? I'm not a good bench presser, so I do it because I like the results that it gives. I'm emotionally attached to results, not a specific lift. So my general recommendations are, if you are a powerlifter, obviously you have to keep it in, okay? You don't really have a choice there. If you are not a power lifter, you have a bit more flexibility. If it is giving you pain, first try to modify it. So if you're getting shoulder pain, maybe bring your grip in a little bit, work on maybe a little bit more tuck. Maybe you can get a little bit more of an arch, learn to, put your shoulders in a different position. No lift is worth getting injured over, but most of the time you can make modifications so that you can still get the benefits while mitigating and minimizing the downsides.
Mini pops and stuff, and it was like almost like if I went again I would have tore it if I did like one more rep, and I think I got really lucky quite a few times. So
that being said, if you're still getting injured, you're getting little tweaks, it just doesn't feel good, and you're not seeing results from it, drop it, dump it. You don't have to do it. No lift is worth getting injured over, and there are lots of great chest movements. You can do incline, you can do decline, you can do dumbbells, you can do machines, you can do cables, you can do rings. There are lots of really, really good chest movements, and you don't have to do any single movement. You also might consider doing it later in the workout. John Meadows, may he rest in peace, was a big proponent of doing this, where you can do your cable flies first and your bench press second, or third or fourth or fifth. There's nothing wrong with that at all, and I think a lot of the issues with bench press are just doing it when not totally warmed up. So you do like one set with 135, then you jump right into your working weights, and then you get injured and you're like, oh, bench press. Well, no, maybe not. In terms of mortality and fatality risk, I don't think that is a big issue. I think often people will see these videos online and then they won't do a movement, or they'll see someone have a pec tear and say, I'm never incline bench pressing again. Well, you have to realize there were a lot of bad decisions that went into that situation, which you can absolutely very easily avoid. I also do think that if you're interested in hypertrophy, there's nothing wrong with sticking to over 5 reps or even over 10 reps. All of these issues that you see are generally from just going too heavy or having bad technique. So if you clean those up, you should have zero issues. I will usually be in like the 8 to 12 rep range or so. And people will often say, oh, like, what's your best bench? Like, what could you bench press right now? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I haven't maxed out in like a year or two or something like that. And they're just like, but don't you want to know what you could do? No, I don't. I don't care. You don't have to max out, okay? So overall, I would say most downsides can be easily managed, and there are a lot of benefits to this lift, especially if you enjoy it. But if you find yourself not enjoying it, feel free to dump it. If you find yourself getting injured enough that it just doesn't seem to be worth it, you can dump it as well. Lots of movements that you can do instead. Anyway, for more information on fatigue management, progressions, more high-level, intermediate, and advanced type of training principles, definitely check out my latest book, Resurrecting Your Gains. I will link it in a pinned comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.